Hello and welcome back to part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, that is where I made this cover right here. So if you want to see how I made the cover with the exposed spine, be sure to check that out. But if you want to see the rest of the journal, you are in the right spot. I'm going to put these buttons to the side that we may use on the spine. And so in this video, we're going to finish the journal. Let's get going and hop right in. I think I'll start by cutting down the papers. So I'm gonna kind of talk to you about the papers I chose. And guys, this is gonna be way different than any journal I've ever made. Now, I know you can see some prints here, but this is my plan for this journal. I am just going to be having 5 signatures, and each one's just going to have 2 pages. So when we fold that, that's going to be 8 sides, and so with 5 signatures we'll have a total of 40 sides. And I just want there to be lots of space for dimension in this journal, so that's what we're doing. And I'm doing blank pages mostly. I guess I'm doing half blank and then half pattern paper, because I just know that's how I work best, and I would rather add the pattern paper when I'm actually decorating, but I just couldn't do all pattern paper this time. I'm hoping I have the courage to do that next time, because I think it's just gonna work best for me, but I don't know why I just can't do it. I'm gonna cut this down to about 8 7/8 of an inch, so almost 9 inches. And then I already cut the rest of the pages down. So it's 12 inches by almost 9 inches. And so we're just gonna go ahead and fold these in half. And like I said, at first I was just going to do all blank pages so that when I go to decorate, I have a blank canvas. But like, I don't know why, I just couldn't do it. So if you're wondering, also the paper pads that I'm using for the plain paper, it's called Winter Whites from Michaels. And the pattern paper is called Heritage. And it's so cute. And I know that I will definitely be using that paper pad to decorate. But the cool thing about having some blank pages in your journal is that when I actually want to use the pattern paper for a background, if I wanted to do any sewing on it or anything like that, it's going to be much easier to do it off of the final journal page. In my opinion, at least, and that's what works best for me. I almost was going to add, fill it up with coffee dyed paper as well, but again, I don't always want a coffee dyed paper background, and I thought the scrapbook paper here would be just a little bit sturdier. So I'm going to finish folding these all in half. All right, so now I'm just going to take each pattern paper and put one of the blank pages inside like that. So this is going to be on the outside, and I just thought that might be nice because a lot of times I don't actually decorate the outside of a new signature. It's just something that I do. And so then you'll be left with the blank on the inside. And you'll have this pretty outside pattern. And then also, since we have that exposed spine, that was another reason that I decided to add some pattern paper on the outside, because that's really going to make a pretty exposed spine. So we have our 5 signatures now, and I'm just going to keep them in a random order. That's totally fine. Like, this journal is going to look super not filled. Okay. So now we are going to go ahead and bind these, but before we get started with that, I am going to finish off the cover here with a eyelet so that I can have a closure. And let's see, I'm trying to see where halfway is. It's really right in that mushroom right there, isn't it? Well, so I'm going to use my crocodile. And I'm just going to go ahead and punch straight through. I'm not even going to measure, but I would say it's about halfway. And my crocodile is not working so great, so I have to kind of wiggle it around a little bit. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and place this here and set it and forget it. Okay. And then I can go ahead and put my pretty satin trim. This is just like, I had this in my fabric bin, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to punch this through here. So I have it folded in half, so now I have this little loop, and I can just pull that through the loop like that, and then tighten it up. You want to tighten it up just enough to make it stay. And then this will be the closure. And once it's all filled up, we can wrap it around like that. And I like doing this on these wraparound journals just because you can tighten it and loosen it very easily. Okay, so let's get on to binding finally. I made a little guide, and I did not even measure, but I just folded my paper into like 3 different spots so that I could kind of visualize where it would be even spacing. And I'm gonna do 2 on top, 2 holes on top, and then 2 on bottom for each signature. So I'm gonna go ahead now and just line this up and hope for the best. And I'm gonna go ahead and punch these holes, all of these holes, into the spine. I'm gonna go ahead and just use some washi tape to kind of hold this in place. And then I have my awl here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm kind of hoping, I left myself only an inch of the spine at the top and an inch at the bottom, and I realized when I did the exposed spine last time I did more like 2 inches, and that gave me a lot more space to actually sew my signatures into. So I'm really hoping that this is going to be enough space. I'm gonna turn this around really quick and just see what that's gonna look like. And it's actually hard to see because I have lace on here, but I can see that we're not like too close to the top or bottom of the spine, so that's good. Okay, so after giving us a closer look, and I'm sorry my thing is so dirty, I actually decided to move the binding holes down just a tad. So I know this looks messy, but I'm just kind of letting you know that so you can see now, if that would focus. It's down a little bit further from the top, and so I hope that makes sense. I obviously am not giving measurements as it is, so just know that if you need to change something up, I would say it's better to do it before you get too far, and then you're like, oh no, I should have changed that up. All right. So then I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes through the bottom as well. So I would say as long as your template that you're going to use for punching the holes into the journal is the same as the one that you use to put the holes in your spine, everything should add up just fine. I did write top at the top because that's one mistake that I used to always make, is that I would accidentally flip my template around. So now I'm going to take that off. Everything's punched there, and I'm going to take my signatures. I don't need to use paper clips because I only have 2 pages, and I know I won't be letting things get away from one another. And I'm going to use this same template, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just fold it in half. And I'm going to make sure to put this right exactly in the center here of the signature. All right, just to be extra careful, I decided I will use paper clips, even though I only have 2 pages. Okay, now the holes on these signatures are going to be rather close to the top, so I have to be very careful to make sure that it's not too close to the top, but it looks like it's going to be okay. It's about 1/4 of an inch down. And so that should be fine, but you do want to be sure that your holes are not too close to the top, which is another good reason to make sure to maybe leave yourself a little bit more space when you are doing an exposed spine like this. And then also be sure that you remember which side is up on your signatures, because that's also going to help everything line up just right. So now I will just continue this same thing and punch holes through all of the signatures, and I'm going to be sure to place these with the top up so that, again, everything's going to line up just perfect when we go to bind. It makes a huge difference. So I'll continue binding the holes through the rest of the signatures, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have the tops and the bottom of our signatures. I have them in the order that I want to sew them into place, and I always like to start with the last signature to the right hand side. So I'm going to keep the top at the top, but I'm going to flip this stack over, put it up here, and I'm going to start with my one on the furthest to the right hand side. For the binding thread, I always like to do a good rule of thumb of doing about 2.5 times the height of the journal, and sometimes I'll even just do 3, just because I would rather have a little bit extra than not have enough, because that's not fun. And remember, since we have the exposed spine, you can try different fun things like adding buttons and things, and we're going to add some buttons to the outside of the spine. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with the second hole to the bottom, or sorry, the second, yeah, let me zoom in. I'm going to start with the bottom hole at the top. Let's say that a little clearer, Jessica. And then we're going to go ahead and sew it right into the very last row, and make sure everything's lined up great. We're going to go ahead and pull that out. Make sure that you leave a good amount on the inside. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and add a button. And so I have some buttons here that I thought would look kind of fun. So let me try to bring this over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and thread it through one hole and then back out. And then you can always kind of move that around and place it on its final place later, and then go back in the hole. And I will say that these holes are a little hard to see since I do have the lace, but I found it. So then we're going to go back in. We're going to flip that back over. Make sure to pull it tight, and especially if you added a button on, you'll want to really make sure that the thread didn't get caught on the button or anything like that, and then just pull really tight. And I actually like to go ahead, since I'm doing 2 holes at the top and 2 at the bottom, I like to go ahead and tie this now. Do a double knot, and then we'll head down to the bottom holes. A little bit different. I don't know if there's a name for this type of stitch or not, but we're going to go down to, and I'm going to go into the top hole, and again line it up with that last row. I'm trying to do this so you guys can actually see. It's hard to flip things over all the way, because I don't, if I'm doing this, you know, when I'm not filming, I don't really flip things over this way. But and then again, I'm going to add another button. We'll use this white one, and again we're going to thread it just right through. If your button has 4 holes, I just simply use 2 of the holes. Okay, tighten that down, and then we'll go back in through the bottom hole all the way into the signature. I'm really surprised I was able to line that up. And give me a second to flip this over so you guys can see it. And we're going to pull that all the way, making sure that the button is on there all right. And now for tying this one off, what I'm going to do is simply try to bring you guys in, because it's really hard to see with the white thread. But I'm going to make a loop underneath this middle portion that goes all the way down from the top to the bottom. So now that I have a loop, I can actually tie the knot right there. So I hope that makes sense, but I also want to make sure that this is tight. Make sure that that's super tight. There we go. And then I'm just gonna trim off a little tail like that. So we have our first signature in. And this one, I think it's over a little bit too much where you don't exactly see it right now, but that's okay because it's gonna be all pretty when it's all said and done. Now I'm gonna take my next one and I'm gonna do the same thing. So I'm gonna speed this up and go a little faster, and I'm just going to keep sewing these in. One quick tip, if you're having a hard time finding the binding holes, if you've used like a fabric or lace cover, you can take your awl, and if you're able to, like I can see the inside holes a lot better. So what you can do is just poke your hole again, and then you can kind of take your needle as you're about to, you know, thread this back in from the outside to the inside, and it just makes it a little bit better. I hope you can see I have the awl pressed through, and then I take it out slowly as I'm kind of like threading the needle into that same hole. And I've had to do that a couple times just to help me find the right hole, because the lace does make it a little hard to find, but that little trick works for me every single time. So I just got done with the very last signature. So now you can go ahead and adjust your buttons and make sure, you know, they are in the right placement that you want. But let's go ahead and take a peek. And when this journal gets filled out even more, I think that the exposed spine is going to look really neat. I just love how that looks, because it's just going to look a little bit more full. So just go ahead, and I'm pretty happy with the button placement here. You can kind of play around with that. I like how the button just adds a little bit something extra. And I decided not to add a tassel on the journal yet. I may, but I didn't add like a journal or a little ring fastener because I just wasn't really feeling it with this journal. But then you can take this and just go all the way around like that. Kind of attach it on the back is probably what I would do to kind of tighten it up, but it doesn't really need it quite yet just because it's not really being used yet. But anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this journal tutorial. I think I'm going to be finished for now until I start working in it. I will definitely want to add some pockets on the inside, and the cool thing about this is that we have so much space for pockets. So I could add some on this side, back here. I could really do on the inside flap if I want to, but I'm not sure how I want to go about with decorating yet. So this journal will be ready for me. Everything lays nice and flat. I'm so glad that I gave myself so much space, and I can't wait to work in this journal. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.